going back to YouTube channels, like the OG YouTube channels, like Michael Lancaster or anybody.
Oh yeah,
Like
I remember watching that
Yeah.
when he was doing the series with like Kyrie.
Yeah.
And he was like tossing the little balls at him. He's like touching.
Yeah.
Pause, but yeah.
Yeah. I remember that too. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Like
That's crazy. I didn't realize what he said.
yeah. You're like, yes.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was.
Was it good?
The YouTube?
Yeah, like whatever you guys were talking. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It was great.
There was such a long pause in between. I didn't know what we were talking about anymore. Yeah, it was good. It was creative.
Yeah.
Okay.
And having Kyrie being involved, and Kyrie's already creative, and then doing the stuff like Michael Lancaster was doing.
Yeah, it's like a podcast.
No, it was just a training session.
Session.
I think they're like in China or something, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, the whole thing about Michael Lancaster right now is we were talking about this earlier, but he's like really against the CLA, which is the kind of the style that I coach with.
CLA.
Yeah, so
What
that's
is CLA?
Constraint-Led Approach. So it's basically like the theory behind it is if you put your players in situations where you manipulate the environment, like certain outcomes will happen. So like let's say I need somebody to create a Euro step without directly teaching them a Euro step.
Yeah.
I might say, given the parameters of the amount of dribbles you have and the way the defense is, create a move to score.
Yeah.
And then the Euro step would naturally
It's like the best
manifest.
move.
Yeah.
You kind of have to like orchestrate like the defense to do that, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Maybe
That's the
you
constraint.
cut them off there
Yes.
or something like
No,
that.
you're right. Yeah, exactly.
It's like the creative approach from the trainer
yes.
to create an environment that's like healthy for that movement to come about.
That's the best way of saying it.
So would they know that they're going to do a Euro step?
See, that's the thing. They don't. And
They don't.
You don't want to explicitly tell them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just
Sometimes I'll hint. I'll be like, well, maybe what you're doing to travel.
Yeah.
Euro step might help here.
Come on. This is how it's done.
Yeah.
But like, and then you want to get a swing step. You just go, well, now the constraint is that that same like mechanism of the Euro step, but now you have to go off your inside foot, and then it generally sticks and occurs. Like, so it's not, it transfers into the game is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like if you learn it from the ground up instead of like practicing it on air for a while and then like from the technical side first and deconstructing it back, if you do it from the ground up,
I feel like
it's more
I'm
transferable.
curious, like what other like styles there is, because this seems like very obvious.
There's like high repetition where you
Bingo.
just you just try to teach them the footwork
Yeah.
That seems
with
like
the basketball.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is what it looks like. Now imitate what I'm doing or use these steps, this footwork.
I feel like
over and over again.
it has to come from like real world situations that you're going to be in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the
that's the
basically what it
idea.
is.
That's the philosophy.
That's exactly the philosophy. And like we talked about, you and me, we talked about players who are very like regimented in reps on reps on reps.
Yeah.
And what we said, the word you came up with was edgy. They're like edgy, not edgy in like the sense of like being edgy,
but like stiff.
They're stiff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like little robots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
just
then
like insert Euro step, like 1, 2.
Yes. Because the game is so nuanced, like the same sequence is never going to happen more than like one time period throughout. Like you're not going to repeat the same sequence over and over again. So you have to be adaptable. And so when you learn it through the CLA, it's adaptable.
Yeah.
That's true.
But to get back to Micah, like I was telling Evan, I think if there's a Mount Rushmore of trainers, he's on it to me. But I think he's a little out of his depth now when it comes to the CLA. And what's the irony is he was like the most like
kind of out there.
out there trainer there was. And
Whoa.
like he's a big influence. I don't know if you've seen him, but he had like the rip cones and like the backboard.
I'm sure at some point.
Oh,
Because
really?
he's kind of like he was saying.
He's like a coach, like one of the
He's
main.
he's one of the main.
He's an IG trainer,
trainers, NBA.
Okay. Mount Rushmore, like of all time.
I
for
would put him on
coaches.
it.
He's very. I mean, especially under the circumstance of like him being very well known and
Yeah.
having been around for a long time.
Yeah.
If you mention his name to any trainer,
Did he coach
basketball
a
player.
team, or was he like
No.
No.
He's like a personal
He's a
trainer.
personal
He's
trainer.
specific, and he's like he has like facilities that people come like stay the night at.
Okay.
And will train for like weeks. They'll come from Europe. He has like multiple facilities where other people are trained to do exactly what he teaches them to do.
Yeah.
So he's like trainers underneath him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And so he worked with Kyrie, or
He worked with Kyrie. He worked with Victor Oladipo, players like a lot of NBA players.
Okay.
He's well respected in the space, but he has like some. Like I was also telling Evan before, like he has like unbelievable like inventions, like his backboard. That's like divided into 6 little pieces. So like you learn how to use the backboard at different angles. I thought that's just genius.
That seems kind of gimmicky.
No, I think it's genius.
That's my initial reaction.
All right, well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be.
I mean, some things, and like, I think I was saying it's like Eminem. Like Eminem, like hits genius level stuff, and then after a while, he stops questioning his own talent. And then all of a sudden, you get like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of my thoughts about it too is like social media impact on the way that people speak and present themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of social media is making general statements about something being the only way.
Right.
Yeah. And so when you do that, you start to lose, I would say, more your peers than anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things, and we could even step into a new realm of like why social media sucks for people that are trying to learn basketball.
Yeah.
Because there's hundreds of trainers saying this is the only way.
Yeah.
Don't do it like this. Do it exactly like this. And as Daniel and I know, basketball is like he just said. There's nothing happens. You might do the same move similar twice in a game, but it's not the exact situation.
Yeah.
100%.
And so there's so many ways to do things. And we were talking about there's train. You know, all the greats have different trainers.
Yeah.
And they've done things different ways, and they're still the greats.
Yeah.
And so there's no like one way to do it per se. But when people start to speak, and this is in any form, it might be business, it might be basketball, soccer. There's people out there just saying this is the only way to do it, or don't do it like this, do it like this, and it becomes a kind of a blatant statement of don't.
Well, even like to the last example, like repetition versus like CLS or whatever, like what you could do like repetition like a Euro step 100 times, and then immediately after do like CLS, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
why
not
that's
both?
a good point. That's a good. I mean, because you're not necessarily going to train that exact way every day. So what are you going to do the rest of the days in terms of like practicing a movement that you did that works?
And that is the problem with CLA coaches. And eventually I want to get some of them on here because I agree with them on a lot of things, but then they become so regimented in their, or not regiment, like dogmatic in their own principles that they are now becoming what they didn't want to be in the first place.
Essentially reverse Micahs.
Exactly. Reverse Micah Lancasters.
Wait, what's dogmatic?
Like too strict in their own belief.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Kind of what we were just talking about. This is the only way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so when I make my coaching staff, like, for example, Sandor is very old school.
Okay.
Like, even though he's a young guy, he's very old school in his approach. And I think, because to be honest, like, if I look at my players, I've never had it just completely CLA. There's always, no matter what, just like where they play at their schools and stuff, like, you're going to have impact from them anyways. Yeah. And so it's hard to even quantify how good you're doing.
I feel like you also have to, like, what does old school mean? You know?
I would define old school, and I also want to hear Evan's take on that as well. But like, it's like reps on reps, like with cones, and then like do it until you get it perfect.
Okay.
And then rep it out.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. No, like do hundreds. I mean, it's essentially the edgy player of like, we're going to shoot a bunch of shots. We're going to do one dribble pull-ups. We're going to do the what's it, the mic and drill. The old school way where you're just just everything very stiff. You know, what's the old UCLA, not the UCLA, was it Kentucky coach where everything's just like, it's almost militant.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can think of that with anything. Like there's old school, like certain guys that this is just the way we've done it. And this is the way we're going to keep doing it. And there's no expansion on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing that also reminds me of is like, because that technically worked for all these other players. Like I'm sure Kobe was doing that. Like he did a lot of the basic things over and over again. But the thing that's missing and that you have to figure out how to teach, and me and Evan were talking about this as well, it's imagination. Like, so if it makes sense to the players who have that, and usually they have like a robust athletic background, like soccer and whatever, so that they can understand like the concepts behind what they're doing. But if you just give somebody like something straight up, like and then like a pattern to do over and over again, if they're not actually conceptualizing it like in their mind's eye, it's not going to translate.
Like that's super powerful. Also, like one thing is too, like a lot of the NBA players are like people who have had success, like doing it their own ways. They're right to feel that that's how you should do it because it worked for them.
Right.
You know, so like also it depends on who you're training and working with.
No, that's real. Yeah.
Right.
It's very real.
But see, the thing that I keep coming back to is those same players. Those are players who played a lot of pickup. I guarantee it. Like they played a lot of pickup.
There's a basis certainly for like. It sounded so weird. There's definitely a basis. That's the way I said that was so out of pocket in my mind. There's definitely like a basis of like what they all did that's not being exposed when they talk about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Usually they hooped a ton in an area where everybody was really good.
Yeah.
And so those things they did eventually translated because they were playing all the time and doing those things.
Right. It wasn't like they did the 3-man weave, but I doubt the 3-man
weave. Right. You could say everybody did it. And it's like, oh, well, all these guys do the 3-man weave.
But that is how they
help none of them.
It. And but at the same time, who's to say that that's incorrect? But like I think I've noticed where I got into this was noticing that around that guys, once they graduated high school and were just going to the park instead of playing just varsity basketball games over and over again, would have like a quantum leap in their ability. And I feel like I saw that with you. I saw that with JJ.
You were about to say me, then you were like, no. But like,
I saw that with.
He looked at you and he's trying to look away. Really.
You. But no,
what's another example?
You were always a street hoop. Like,
okay.
We were always there. Like,
you're saying people that didn't street hoop, then they started to like play pickup and stuff, and they got way better.
Yes, like you weren't like you didn't come from like an AAU program and like your coach like had you like doing like all that stuff. Okay, like, you were always
weren't boxed in.
Yeah, you were never boxed in.
Okay. I came from like the street hoops.
Yeah, you came from the gutters. Yeah.
Crawled for the streets.
Yeah. So that's what you guys are saying is like pickup is.
I think pickup's so important.
I mean, my son is super into soccer right now, and so we're doing as much as we can to learn about soccer. He's 7. 7. Well, 7 and a 4. They both are.
Yeah.
And we're watching a lot of different like training videos from pros.
Okay.
And it's a similar kind of concept of like playing. They're like listing all the best things you can do to get better at soccer and what I would have done more in my youth from these pro players. Ooh. And they're like, playing beats all. Like as much as all these drills help, you should be doing these drills to work on your touch and your passing. Playing beats all.
Yeah.
Mini games, small 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, full soccer games when you can. I'm like, that translates to basket. I mean, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Some of the best players we know like picked up the concept of team basketball much later because they weren't boxed in by somebody telling them, you are this way and you're going to stay this way.
Yes.
That seems super logical, actually.
It does.
Everything else should come like secondary or like to complement.
So then what would be the best training environment to like facilitate that?
Like replicating it maybe in a way that like is specific towards like certain maybe needs or
and that's what the CLA is.
Oh, it's
damn.
That's what that is.
So we just reverse engineered CLA.
Yeah.